Welcome back, Rabbi Dr. Eliezer Brut. I'm here in the United States of America. Rabbi Brut is in the Holy Land in Eretz Yisrael. It is during the war. Rabbi Brut told us that there's been an announcement that many missiles will be coming. Hashem should protect us all. And if Rabbi Brut has some visitors in his ma'amad, you'll know why during this episode. An episode about the Menorah. Seforim that were written describing how the Menorah looked in the Beis HaMikdash. But even more important, and I guess interesting to me, is throughout the generations, we've seen menorahs and shuls, we've seen different... He's shaking his head. My introduction is already too long. Let's just get to the L'zecha Nishmas. And we are so happy that this dedication is sponsored L'ilui Nishmas Reb Nachman ben Reb Nosson Mostavsky by Shlomo and Aviva Mostavsky in the memory of Mrs. Ruth Genauer of Seattle, Washington. Halsha Rivka Bas Horav Avram HaKohen, whose yahrzeit is Ches Nisan. We are Leil Erev Rosh Chodesh Nisan, dedicated by her children Eli and Eva Genauer. So without further ado, without me telling you what he's going to be talking about, Rabbi Brut, take it away.
Okay, so we're going to talk about all different aspects about the Menorah, how to learn more about the Menorah. As I call it, it's going to be a smorgasbord of some of the diyunim throughout the generations, and along the way we'll meet some seforim also. Okay, so first, an autobiographical account, which I'm fond of talking about autobiographies, called Memories of Two Generations, Yiddish Life in Russia and Texas, Alexander Gurwitz. He also learned in Volozhin. So he writes about the end of the winter was hard for us, because the parshas at the end of the winter were very hard. The Maharshal talks about karbanos and the Mishkan. So our Rebbe, he tried to draw pictures of the complicated menorah of the Mishkan with all its decorations, although he himself did not comprehend its design. And small wonder, if the great Moshe did not know until God himself showed it to him, how can a small-time town Melamed hope to understand it? And most certainly, how did he expect little children to master it? Okay, anyway, he expected us to be able to understand it. After tonight's shiur, we'll definitely be able to relate that even if you're not a little kid, the idea will come out very clearly how complex Menorah actually is. Okay, so we already know, Chazal say that Moshe Rabbeinu had a great difficulty with it, and Rashi brings down the Midrash, and Hashem Yisbarach just said throw it in the fire. So the question already is asked, what's Pshat Shlomo HaMelech was able to do it later on? So Chaim Kanievsky already in his work on the Rambam of this Derech Chachma, he already talks about it over there in the beginning of Parag Gimel. He says Shlomo is different because it was easier for him already. He had Moshe Rabbeinu's Menorah, or he was Chacham Kaladam, but he blives Shver, and he has some other answers about this question, and others do too. So the bottom line is, you open up your Parshas Truma, Parshas Vayakel, they repeat it again. So first you look at the psukim and you're like, big deal. What's the big deal? You learn these psukim, and all of a sudden you start learning it very carefully, slowly, not in a mindset of your youth where we already made fun of how a lot of times Chumash remains in the youth, how he learned it as a kid with the pictures that he came home with. When you start learning the psukim and then you open up Rashi, you learn Targum Onkelos, other Rishonim, you start seeing how complex everything is. The Kaftor, the Shkedim, what they are, the kaisis, was their feet on the Menorah? What's the exact weight? How did it look? Which ends up being a very big conversation. Was it like on a slant, or was it like round the branches? Then everyone's very well aware of the Titus Russia, the what's called the Arch of Titus, the Menorah over there. Is the picture real? Is the Menorah still in the Vatican or Rome or Italy, whatever? Okay, but there's all types of questions. So, as usual, we will try to discuss some of them today. Now, so of course, like always, there's a lot of seforim written about it, and unbelievable amounts of literature and ink has been spilled on this topic. To start, one of my heroes, Reb Shlomo Yosef Zevin, he wrote an article on the Menorah. It's found in his Me'adim Halacha, and it's a very nice, good article. One wants to just get the basic questions, just to see how he sets up all the different issues, brings down some fascinating raid, sends you to some more Makairis. That's one major Maramakim to use. In very recent years, Encyclopedia Talmudis, which has been trying to pop out a few volumes a year, one of the most recent volumes is Krach Nun Beis, and they too have a nice collection on the Menorah, very, very chashuv arichos. with many pictures to explain all the different aspects, because as you said, when you start learning the psukim, everything you see pictures is very, very important to understand different things. Then there's also a work from Mechon HaMikdash from Rabbi Yisrael Ariel. It's called Menorah Zav Tahar, also a fascinating work on the topic. And Maharshal, there's a work called the Menorah from the Bible to Modern Israel from Stephen Fine, an excellent work about this in English, very well worth reading. There's a work we spoke about. Rabbi Asher Myers from Tells, Ohio, wrote a massive work on the whole HaMishkan, the Kelev, also on the Big Dekuna. So he also did an incredible job on it. And my dear friend Menachem Zilber, who's fascinated with the topic of the Menorah in general, sent me a crazy amount of literature that's been written over the years on the Menorah. And after starting to look and to do this, I just became beyond overwhelmed. Now, why are we speaking about it now? This is part of the Daf Yomi. A few weeks ago, we finished Daf Yomi, Gemara Menachos, Daf Chav Ches, Chav Tes, has a blot and a half, which deals with Menorah. And again, towards the end of Menachos, we're also going to have more aspects about the Menorah. And also comes up in Daf Peches, Tzadik Ches, Tzadik Tes. The Kitzur, there's a lot about the Menorah. So the Gemara takes these psukim, and all of a sudden, when you start learning it, if you learn about Daf Yomi, or if you're not learning Daf Yomi and you just want to learn the psukim, you start seeing a lot more is happening. Okay, we already mentioned Barichos in the episodes of Chaim Kanievsky that there's an early work called Beraisa the HaMishkan, very, very early. And in this work, there are at least 2 chapters that are devoted to the Menorah. Incredible also. Why? Because a lot of things, even though the Gemara has more than a blot and a half about the Menorah, but there's a lot of information that's missing. And if you have the Beraisa the HaMishkan, it will help you greatly. Of course, we spoke a little bit about it. We had a whole episode which we dealt with Reb Chaim Kanievsky Bechlal and the Mishkan. So we spoke a little bit about the origins of the Beraisa the HaMishkan. Rishonim had it, and so B'kitzur, you should look at Reb Chaim Kanievsky's parish, also excellent parish on the work. Now, Achronim, the Beraisa the HaMishkan only came available very late on for Achronim. Some Rishonim had it, Rashi, Ramban, others. Reb Chaim Kanievsky lists out, but of note was the Malbim, the Netziv, they use it, and more recently I could say Reb Meir Yannai in his work on the Rambam, on Kachim, Har Moriah, incredible work. Reb Zevin in the Arch of Titus, they also use the Beraisa the HaMishkan a lot, and Versteht sich in the Encyclopedia Talmudist they also do. Now, just one other thing, in the new Encyclopedia Talmudist on Menorah, they put in Reb Zevin's article, Reb Zevin being the main person from the founding aspects of all aspects of the Encyclopedia Talmudist, so they put his article there also. Fine. But Kitzer, here you have an early Makar of Chazal going through all different aspects. Okay. Now, so one of the things which we already said, it's very hard. So what's so hard to make it? The answer is, when you start learning the psukim, so you have to know, well, what's the exact designs? All the exact designs, the amount of opinions between the Rishonim and already going back to Chazal, it's remarkable. So first, that's one aspect what it's hard about. Another aspect that it's hard about is how to make this all. It all had to be made from one piece of gold. Now, just to throw out another fascinating thing, an early makar that we have is something known as Piyutei Yannai. This is very, very early work, and in there, there's a piece that he talks about that we know that there was Gviim, Kaftorim, and Prachim. Each one, he says, was a different shade of gold. The Kaftorim were Zedoim, the Prachim were white, and the Gviim were Yaroik. So now, imagine that. You have to make even different shades of gold in the thing. Now, the question is, so my friend Rabbi Yaakov Stahl, I've quoted him in the past, he has a journal which he publishes on every few weeks called Segulah. So he has a 20-something page article where he deals with this aspect of the gold, and he actually shows that there were other early Paitanim that had possible this concept of how to make it that was so exact, even with the shades of gold. These items have to be in specific shades of gold. He brings certain Midrashim might be alluding to this, and he even locates some old archaeological discoveries or paintings, let's say in the Middle Ages, that might even possibly show this to be true. Okay. Anyway, so Bekitzer, it's very complicated. So now, if something's very complicated, what's the first thing which I already said a few times? You have to have visual aid. Visual aid is to have pictures. Now, I've spoken about this many, many times. In general, how important it is, and Daf Yomi is coming up soon to Chulin. So in Chulin, it's legendary also that it's a huge difference if one learns Chulin with images, because we are regular people, we are not exposed to animals and to know all the parts of the animals. So it changes the Masechta for Chulin. So here too, when you learn the Menorah, and you have the pictures in front of you, it's remarkable. They were already aware of this. So Lamashal, as early back in Lamashal, a work 1598 from Krakow called Eimek Halacha. He was a Talmud Levush. It's a work that's full of pictures all over of a lot of the Gemaras that need pictures, and has Chashav Haskamas. So he has a picture of the Menorah to help one learn the Sugyas and Menachos. Now then, a little earlier, there was a work published called Biurim, and it's attributed to Reb Nosson Shapira. This work is published in 1593, and this too also has a picture of the Menorah, and the purpose of the picture is not just decorations, it's a picture to help you when you're learning Rashi. It's a work on Rashi. Beraisa later on, it was in Segulah that it's a forgery. It was not written by Reb Nosson Shapira. It's not the Megala Amukais. Rebbe Katzman deals with this in his work on the Megala Amukais. And so it turns out, but people did not know this, so they used this picture as if the Megala Amukais says it. As a matter of fact, even Encyclopedia Talmudis that I just mentioned, and also a early work called Chanukas Habayis from Moshe Chayfetz, who was more famous for his work Meleches Machsheves. So he wrote a beautiful work on the Kelim of the Beis HaMikdash, and he has a Arichos Nifla on the Menorah also, with pictures. Again, this concept. So he refers to the picture of Reb Nosson Shapira. He's not aware that it wasn't really his. Okay. Anyway, it just recently was republished, and it's a very chashuv work in general. Okay. Now, there's another early work, a Talmud of Maharshal called the Yosef Das, an incredible work on Rashi. He had old manuscripts of Rashi, and he also has a beautiful picture in his work. So we see that already in the early printing, in the early tekuvas of print, they were aware that it's important to have in front of you a picture of the Menorah. As I said, the Menorah is very hard. Now the question becomes, did Rashi make a picture, and does the Rambam make a picture? So the answer is like this. Rashi, when you learn the Gemara, Lamashal Menachos Chavches or Chavtes, one of the places Rashi says Kizeh. And then you look, there's no picture there. Isis in different Gemaras, it refers you to later on. I said Menachos at the end of the tzaddiks, there's a picture of, is that Rashi? There's a picture. Now the question is, who put that picture in? So in general, Eli Gnauer, who's one of the sponsors of today's shiur, he's been working extensively on Rashis and the pictures and who put the pictures in and what they tampered with and what's going on with this. So this particular Rashi has not dealt with. But the point is that already, if you open up your Shas Vilna standard thing in the back, you'll see a picture of, according to Rashi, possibly of the Menorah. Now, but does Rashi have pictures in Chumash? So now this is interesting also. The Mechkar, Lamashal, is a fellow who worked a lot on Professor Gruber. He's worked a lot on Rashi and images, Bechlal. So he shows that there are some manuscripts of Rashi, and others have discovered this earlier. He writes that it seems maybe Rashi might have had pictures of the Menorah. Now, one of the theories behind it is it's not only because of the hardship, it's also because for the longing of the Beis HaMikdash, possibly. That's a suggestion that's been thrown out. Also, okay, but the bottom line is, from the way I see it, is more it's complicated. So they attempted to make pictures. So there are pictures that are so far back that they might be even attributed to Rashi. Okay, now but as far as Shas Vilna, it's unclear. Fine. Now, Shas Vilna means I pulled out to look in let's say in Bramberg, one of the earlier editions of the Talmud. There's no pictures, so someone has to check where the pictures, when this picture came in. As I said, Gnauer has done this for a lot of, but for this one he has not. Now, just to throw out there, just past few weeks, a book came out on the Fuss of the Shas Vilna from Mordechai Zalkin. Also important to know about in general. Okay, now that's Rashi. What about the Rambam? So it's interesting is like this. When you learn Rambam Perishim Mishnayis, or sometimes some kids they like to look in the Gemaras and they'll see there's a picture in the Perishim Mishnayis of a Menorah, I think maybe even of a Lechem Apanim. Rambam over here in Menachos in Perek Gimel, he has, depending on what traditions you use, he has a whole arichas. So he says like this: Ra'isi letzayer kan tzuras hamenorah b'shleimusa. The Rambam says, I feel that you need to have a picture, and I'm going to make a picture. And he goes on and he makes a whole picture and he explains by arichos. Many lines devoted to explaining all different aspects of based on the psukim, how the menorah should look, and then he has a real picture. Okay, so now the question always was, is it, now I did not track all the different nuschais, l'mashal, of Perish Mishnayis, but the significance is like this. At certain points in time, we have located, without getting all the details, Rabbi Kapach has published in the 1960s the Perish Mishnayis based on the Rambam, based on the nuschais of the Rambam. So this picture is authenticated that this is the real, authentic picture of the Rambam, how the Rambam drew it. Now, what's very interesting is as follows, and this is what everyone points out, and this has been, a lot of ink has been spilled on this. We're not going to go through the actual topic, just to mention is as follows. When you have a standard way of the menorah is, it's like all the branches are round. In the Rambam, it's on an angle. I'm just going to show it over here for those that could see. I think you might be able to see. It looks like this. And so this is how Kapach publishes in the 60s this picture of the Rambam, and he's claiming based on other, that this is how the Rambam wrote it. Okay, so the Rambam seems to be writing that it's on an angle. Everyone knows, you ask everyone, you look, and pictures everywhere, and things that he discovered, they're all round, not similar to the Rambam. Turns out Rashi also, it's possible that he held that it's also supposed to be like this. Okay, now the question is, so there's a fascinating piece that was also around the time that Kapach discovers the actual picture of the Rambam. So there's a fascinating piece of Rabbi Avram ben Rambam. Let me see if I have it here. Sorry. Anyway, I don't have the quote of the Rabbi Avram ben Rambam over here, where Rabbi Avram ben Rambam also talks about this picture that his father made. So part of the conversation was the Rambam, let's say, was he an artist, and was he being exact that this is how he felt it was, and it should be taka on an angle, not round? This is part of the discussion, and we'll see a drop about that momentarily. Lemaisa, Rabbi Yisrael Areli, in his work on that I quoted earlier about the Menorah, and he deals with at length discussing the Rambam Shita, possible problems with the Rambam. The Chabadsker, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and Chabad in general are fascinated by this topic. The Lubavitcher Rebbe has spoken a lot about it. They've collected a lot about this, and there's a sefer that I got recently called Biurim al Tzirei Rambam Masechtas Midos, where he deals with at length all the different aspects from this picture. Just not just, I'm just focusing on the thing that everyone talks about because it's glaring on you, but all the different aspects, how the Rambam makes the kaisis and how all the different things, they analyze it to death. And a lot of articles have been written about this over the years. Now, okay, so the question is it possible even that the Rambams, that there's true, is there other Makairis possibly that the Rambam holds like this, besides for this picture that some people say, okay, we don't want to believe is authentic. Now, part of the problem is like this. We have, so Maharsha Chaim Kanievsky, he uses this picture in his work on the Rambam. He has a bunch of things that he points out in different aspects. He's been mamish very carefully looking at it. How the Frankel Rambam uses this picture in the back, they publish it. There's other Rambam pictures also elsewhere. But the bottom line is, possibly Rashi and the Rambam, this is how they held that the Menorah should be, as opposed to the standard way you think of how a Menorah looks. Now, interestingly enough, recently, so I said, Reb Chaim Kanievsky, he shows that he goes that it's possible that this is how the Rambam really wrote it, and this is and there's other Makairis in the Rambam and Yad Chazaka also that this is what he will allude to. Interestingly enough, is like this. Rabbi Avigdor Nebenzahl he gives shaar on Rambam at some points, and he gives a shaar on Hilchos Beis. He gave shaar on Hilchos Beis Bechila Rambam, and someone wrote up. Or Nisan al-Kohen, he wrote up like mamish in-depth transcripts of word for word what he said in these shiurim. So what's interesting is that in 3 different places in the Rambam Hilchos Beis Bechira, when the Rambam talks about it, he says straight up that he held that this is the he talks all about Lamashal. Everyone points to what do you mean? We have the Arch of Titus, that the Menorah is round, not like the Rambam. So it would seem that that's a starka raya, not like the Rambam. And plus, we have numerous discoveries, archaeological discoveries that are ancient, that definitely do not go like the Rambam. So he says like this: don't bring me a raya. He's willing to accept. He believes he buys into very strongly that the Rambam and other places in the Rambam, it's clear this is how the Rambam held like this, and that it's And it makes a lot of sense. And he talks about it in 3 different places. And it means in 3 different shiurim, he came back to this. He says, you'll bring me, it's a machlekes in the Rambam and the Titus. Well, of course, the halacha is like the Rambam. Then he says, all the different pictures you find, the kfarim, the archaeological discoveries, and the coins, ein misham rayik. Everyone copied from each other. So basically, he's willing to accept very strongly. He even talks about the Machon HaMikdash, what they say. He says, he talks about that too in these transcripts of these shiurim, which is very, very nice shiurim on the Rambam of Hilchos Beis HaBechira. Now this plays out very importantly, as I just said, with Titus, because part of the conversation is what's going on over here. Is this an authentic picture or not? So Lamashal Rav Kapach, he says that that it's not authentic, and one of his nekudas is that people say the angles is no, the Rambam is different. The Rambam holds not like this, and it's not a forge, and it's authentic, and this is how the Rambam had it. Okay. Now, besides for Kapach, interestingly enough, Rav Herzog also felt very strongly that you cannot bring a raya from the Titus, the tourists of the Menorah and Titus in Rome. Now, a few aspects were raised. One of them is that the base. The base of the Menorah does not have feet, which we'll get back to momentarily. And also there's images of the Kohenim which it seems to be problematic based on Gemara. So that's one problem to show that Rav Herzog felt that this is not authentic, at least for sure not that part of the image of Titus that's found in Rome. Now, then he says, another point is, he talks about, is the aspect of how does forget about if there's pictures on it. Are there feet to the Menorah? So normally, when you look at a picture of the Menorah, what would you would say? So the answer is, you would assume it has feet, but is there any makairis that it has feet? So as a davar pashut, Rashi, the Rambam, they say it has feet, 3 feet. And numerous sources all say it has 3 feet. Okay. Some people say maybe the Haramiri, the Arch of Titus, that's how something stands, and it's pasha. It was pasha to everyone that it stood with feet. Now the problem is the picture by the drawing, the whatever you want to call it, by Titus does not have 3 feet. It has a thing, but besides for it having pictures of problematic things that goes against the Gemara and Avigdor, but it doesn't have feet. So that's another raya glaring that this is not authentic. Okay. So what's interesting is like this. Is there a makar for 3 feet, for that there's 3 raglayim under the Menorah? So I found it very interesting is that, so everyone says there's a chazal somewhere about it. So it turns out, Reb Chaim Kanievsky, and already way back in his Kiryat Melech, and then also in his Beraisa the HaMishkan, he sends you to what's known as a Midrash Tadshe, Perek Yud. And if you look in, let's say, Encyclopedia Talmudis, they send you to there as a marmakam. Okay, great. So you'll say we have a marmakam. There's a Midrash. Now, Nakuda is there is such a Midrash, and so you open up so right away I open up my Midrash and this Midrash Tadshe, and I can't find it. I'm looking high and low. Reb Chaim Kanievsky, I have checked him up many times, especially when it comes to Chazal. If he says something, it's there. It's usually going to be there. So I spent a lot of time looking into this Nakuda, and I see as follows: that the Taka is a Medrash Tadshe Perek Yud, and in this Perek, so first of all, this is an authentic Medrash that was only published, let's say, 150 years ago for the first time. Then was published a few other times. There are some early manuscripts of this Medrash that exist. I actually today wanted to check the exact nuschayis of all the manuscripts but none of them are available to. You're very spoiled today. Not most, but a very large percentage of things by clicking a few buttons, if you know what to click, you could get to manuscripts popping up on your computer screen after a few minutes. For some reason, these manuscripts of this Medrash you're not able to do so. And in the short amount of time that I had to locate it, it actually take a lot of time to find it. So what happened is like this. In Medrash Tadshe, Perek Yud, I think it's Perek Yud, possibly in some, it might be in Perek Yud Aleph. So it says like this, Shivim Amo, it's very, has to do with numbers. This parak deals with Maisa Mishkan, the Menorah, and the Mizbech. So over there it talks about, says as follows, Shivim, that's 70. Then it says next, what are the Shivim Kalim? And then it says some of the things that lists out, and then it goes on another thing, Shivim Sanhedrin, okay. So now, when you look at this line, it says Shivim Kalim Haya Elohein Gvim Kaftar Kaninim Prachim Veneras. So where in the world does it say anything about 3 feet? The answer is that it appears that there's a girsa that says, what are the Shivim Kalim? Reglayim, Gvim, Kaftarim, Kanim, Prachim, Veneras. So, but that would need that it's not talking about Shivim Kalim, it's talking about specifically Menorahs. There's another girsa that says Taka Menorah. Now, so that's where Chaim Kanievsky had such a girsa. Now, we already spoken about in other episodes that he used the Eitz Midrashim of Eisenstein. And Taka, that's the nusach that Eisenstein has when he brings down this, he has this Midrash, but he tampered with it and stuff like that. So he Taka has this nusach of, he has this nusach. Okay, now, the Menorah, and in the Menorah, Gimel Raglayim. He adds in Gimel Raglayim. Now, no one said, it doesn't say it openly in any of the Nuschais Gimel Raglayim, but he adds that in. I don't think anyone else says that. Actually, no, maybe someone else does say that. Now, it turns out, bottom line is that there really is not. So Chaim Kanievsky knew about it from his Nusach that he had in the Medrash, but it turns out that we have, there are definitely some Nuschais of this Medrash that says, it would read like this: Menorah, there are Menorah Uva Kalim or something like that, and amongst those, what are them? And it counts even the Raglayim as part of this to get up to this high number of 70. That would, based on the Cheshbon and the Parshanim that there's one or two people that talk about this Medrash, they say it has to be that there's 3 feet. So here we have a Makar, Chaim Kanievsky. No one else points to this Makar, but this is Chaim Kanievsky in his unique type of Makias, so it exists. And just to throw out there, Rabbi Avram Epstein, many years ago, he worked a lot on this Medrash. It's considered authentic, early Medrash, and he discusses all different aspects about it in his work on this Medrash. Rabbi Avram Ben Agra in his Rav Palam talks about this Medrash, showing earlier sources about it. Okay. But the bottom line is that what I'm trying to show is that this Medrash is a source. So now this would conflict with the image that we have today of Titus. Okay, what's called the Menorah of Titus or the Arch of Titus. Fine. Now, another small aspect is: was there a stone in front of the Menorah? How did the Kohen get a little light? You have to stand on a stone. Did the stone have steps? So this gets us to talk about the Sefer Shiltei HaGiborim, which we mentioned in a different episode. So it's an incredible encyclopedic work about the Mishkan, the Beis HaMikdash, all these different aspects. So he talks about it at length, exactly which aspect of the stone, and he's like into all these type of technical aspects. But already in Chazal talks about there was such a thing for. Yeah. Okay, so now this will get us to, hold on. Okay, so now this conversation also plays out with a complicated shaila, which plays out as follows, and that is making a model, a mock Mishkan, so that the kids can learn it. So you want to make a Menorah, so you want to do an unbelievable job. Is one allowed to make a Menorah mamish like the Psukim, like the Rambam, let's say, like Rashi, or use the other works about this and put it out, and do such a thing? So it turns out that this is a very complex topic. Now, you have to understand that we're asking it, the way I'm bringing it out is for modern day, for our period of time, which is we have electricity. But in the olden days, they didn't have electricity. So what did they have? They had menorahs. That's how they lit. So it's nice to have a menorah that just, similar to the menorah of the Beis HaMikdash. 6 is very convenient. 7 is very convenient. So is that even allowed? So it turns out that there is a halacha in Shulchan Aruch, Yeridea, Siman Kuf Mem Aleph, based on the Sugyas of Menachos, and also there's parallel Sugyas of Avigdor Nebenzahl and Rosh Hashanah, and it says as follows in halacha. Okay, then it says you should not make a shulchan tavnas shulchan menorah tavnas menorah. But it says like this. So basically, there's a halacha not to make an identical like the menorah. I mean, say you want to make a model, you can make a model, just don't make it identical. Okay, so what does that mean? What does it mean you can't make it identical? Says the Mechaber, even if you use other metals. Even if you don't have you're not going to do the best job. You're not going to do it with the gviyim kaftarim vrachim, which is also the shear of how high the menorah is. So if you don't do that, but you're doing 7, says Mechaber, no. This is based on the Gemara, and this is the ultimate psak of this mechaber is based on the Tshuvas Maharik and Siman Ayin Hey has a massive tshuva where he deals with this. And basically it comes out that if it's mamish doima, if it's doima in any way, 7 is considered the identical way how it was in the times of the Mishkan and / Beis HaMikdash, and that's the problem. So if it has 7, so you can't make such a menorah. So now, even the way the mechaber is saying it sounds like with a model, but it's not. It's really much more. It's really how they had lights until electricity was. So you should not have such a thing. Okay, and he has the Maharik has a whole arichos over here. Okay, now comes along the Schach, and the Schach seems to very complicated how to learn up the Schach, different possibilities how to learn the Schach, and it might come out according to the Schach that if let's say you have a wooden candles set with 7, it will be mutter. Now, just to show you how lebedik this was, so in tshuva of Reb Chaim HaKohen, so he has a tshuva where he deals with this very topic, because as I said, it was very more. If one can make a menorah of 7 kanim, and you don't have the gviyim, so he says. This is what's quoted. Everyone brings this down. Right, the Pesach Tshuva quotes this by Richos. There's a Maharshal, which is in the Tfuah shaar in the back in Rosh Hashanah. He goes very strongly against the Schach, and basically his conclusion is that one cannot make. You cannot make. Let's say you have. Sorry, let me just see if I can find the copies. Moral of the story: don't have too many pages. So basically, the Tfuah shaar in his Bechar shaar says you should not. People wanted to make a menorah similar to the Mikdash, 7 kanim. Some maybe even they felt it's round. He says no, avadi cannot. He goes very strongly against the Schach. He says look in the Maharik, etc. Now, so Chaim Kohen, the Maharshal, does not go. He seems to argue on it. He also tries to explain the Schach, and it turns out this concept of lighting it in a round format, we'll get to momentarily. The Chacham Tzvi also has a tshuva about this, quoted by the Paiskim, and he basically, his tshuva is, just to say what the question was, if I can make it a menorah, and it has on top 8 neiros. It's Sheva Kanim, but it has 8 neiros, and he basically comes out, he deals with the Maharik also, that will be mutter, that it's mutter. Lamaisa, you have to look at Lamashal and Rebbe Kiva in Shulchan Aruch and others, and it's not a simple matter what to do, but it also plays out in how the menorah bechlal even looked. And say how we picture that it was in Masudr. There was 7 neiros. So first, Grada, Rebbe Paisik and his Sefer and others shtaltzu that this is why the menorah of Hanukkah is 8. Dafka because of this, and this somehow answers the famous question of Beis Yosef, and others throw that out there. But what happens is like this: we assume the menorah looked. There was 3 and 3, and then in the middle there was another one, and each three was facing the sham, what we'll call, just for lack of a better term, a shamish. It seems from possible allusion of a sefri zuta, and the Magen Avram deals with this in Zeis Ranan, and this the Tshuvas Reb Chaim HaKohen also deals with this, is that it was round. I mean to say there's some menorahs is they all the 7 there was 6 and it was round, a completely different picture than how you picture it. And taka there were menorahs that's how people made. So and that's really the question that the Tfuah shaar is asking. I'm not making it. Let's say I make it not like the way the menorah that everyone pictures was in the Beis HaMikdash. I make it completely different. Would that be mutter? I'm making it round. So this. Professor Sperber has some pictures to show this, and that's how people had lights in the Middle Ages. As I said, keep on saying this is how they lit in the Middle Ages. Anyway, bottom line is, well, this plays out in a halachic aspect. So people go back to is the with Titus also. Okay, fine. Now, just to mention 3 more nakudis to this episode, if I could find my papers, because they really got mixed up over here bad. Give me a second over here. Wow, this was okay. So Maharshal, just to throw out here, the Chida writes about the menorahs. He says he remembers Sha'asu Beis HaKnesses Yerushalayim menorah shel matchas bas Zayin Kanim, Moreinu, Chazan, the Baal Chazan Nachem, V'shar Rabbanim, Zecher Kun, Levracha, Asru L'kaima, but Sivil Takrim Takef, and they added it to make it 8. So you see the Chida also saying, going like this. But look in the Pesach Tshuva, the Darkei Tshuva, and all the arichos of the seforim about this topic. Okay. The Kitzur, the Menorah becomes the symbol. It's found everywhere. Ready from archaeological discoveries. The Menorah is everywhere. And as printing press goes on, you find that the seforim are adorned with the Menorah. And this has been traced by an article from my friend Dan Rabinowitz on the seforim blog, the image of the Menorah in the early printed Hebrew book. And there's a lot of literature about this all over. There's a doctorate that deals with it, showing in the early prints, tracing the picture of the Menorah was very popular. There's a lady, Bracha Yaniv, she's famous for working about the pictures or in all the decorations in the shuls, Bechlal. So she has a book called The Carved Wooden Torah Arcs of Eastern Europe. So there too, she has a bunch of pictures of how the throughout shuls all over Europe, tracing how far back it goes, and different interesting pictures she puts in her book of the Menorah. It's everywhere. Okay. So, like everything else, there has to be a Segulah possibly attached with this, and that is as follows. Now, what's interesting is this Segulah does not come from the people that, like some people like to make fun of Segulas, especially us Litvaks. So this is a much different type of a Segulah. It's known as the Segulah affiliated with Perek Samach Zayin of Kapitel Tehillim. And there was such a thing. Turns out, there's early Rishonim there's Rishonim that talk about it. We'll get to that momentarily. And the Maharshal, he has a chibur, a very small chibur called Menorah Zavtar, a few pages, like 8 pages. And in the shaar, it's published. What year is it published? 1581. That's literally a few years after the Maharshal dies. And in there, it says like this. When David went out to war, he took this Kapitel Tehillim in the form of a Menorah. Mi sheyir zeh mizbar kol yom mitzir b'tzuras Menorah yimtzeh chen v'seichel toy bein melikim v'edon. Okay, v'im hu mitzir al aron kodesh yogin b'agzeir ala kal. It's going to help this. Now this is the Maharshal. The Maharshal, we know even the whole discussion, not for now, about the Maharshal b'chlal Kabbalah. This is the Maharshal talking over here. V'amar chachmei b'alei Kabbalah shakadosh baruch hu David al ruach hakodesh hamizbar kasva isis v'chein hirais l'Moshe, all different types of things. And the komishim, then it says mizbar b'Menorah b'chol yoy b'anitz cham lo yikro shum zera b'kitzer, all types of Segulas. Now, then there's next 8 pages, way above my pay grade, Kabbalah, and this is the Maharshal, one of the greatest of all time achronim that we have, saying this, linking this to the Tehillim. Okay, shortly afterwards, there's a Talmud of his, wrote a sefer called Mizbeach Hazav, Reb Shlomo bar Mordechai, and he writes in the Akdama, talking about his Rebbe's work on the Kapitel, and he's going to be mamshechit with, he wrote a work on the Pitum Aktoiris, okay, and his work also has chashuva things, and he deals with the Menorah. He also deals with the Menorah in his incredible work called Mizbeach Hazav. So, okay, so all of a sudden, we're seeing some interesting aspect with the Menorah. Going further on, so there's a incredible arichos. A lady did, it seems she wrote a doctorate about it also, but in a volume, she basically wrote, it's called the Shiviti luach. Okay, so what am I referring to? And that's as follows. When you open up, you noticed this when you learned Mishnah Berurah, Mamash, one of the first Shari Chuvas in Arch says as follows. V'reisi bekisvei of his uncle, Daidi Zikni, Arav Chassid, Elikai, Rizal Malukur, the Kasav al Zeh B'Shem, the Baal Tefillah Shari brings something from him about it. So this is, the problem is people don't watch it. Is it problematic? So maybe you should be mevatel it. Then he says like this: V'nira the Menorahs hagdolim amitziyarim shal klaf shekoyim beis hakneses lefnei almud. A lot of shuls, even today, many shuls have they even have fancy decorations with it. We're talking about if you have a paper and then people are not going to be careful with it. That's the problem, and it could come to mechikas Hashem. Fine. Okay, so that the Shaar Tshuva talks about this is mamish in the beginning of Shaar Tshuva. So the nakuda over here is like this: that there's a linkage between what ultimately she deals with incredible arichos over here. The Shiviti luach has to do with that. Also has to do with this Maharshal, and it's earlier than the Maharshal of Parak Samach Zayin having in the form of a Menorah. So the Shiviti wasn't just that Shiviti Hashem in the Menorah, it had this Kapitel Tehillim and all the different pictures. She deals with this at great length in this article found in Chida, almost 50 pages, with dozens of pictures showing this, and everyone knows. You've seen this in many shuls that you have traveled and seen this type of thing, and this is what's going on. So there's a tremendous power of Kapitel Samach Zayin already from Rishonim, and it has to do with the tour of a Menorah, and eventually transforms into a different thing of the Shiviti thing, but it somehow linked the two Minhagim link, which is common enough. We're not going to document it. Okay, I just have two more pratim to conclude, and that is as follows. Just like everything else, there's an aspect in the Torah, which is that sometimes we try to give, not we, Rishonim try to give timim, Chazal sometimes do, for the various mitzvahs that we have. So what's the story with the Menorah? What's the reason behind the Menorah? So the Rambam already in Moreh Nevuchim, he talks about in Parak Gimel, Parak Mem Hey, he talks about the Kli HaMikdash B'chlal, and he says about the Menorah, it's a covered kedei l'roimim l'chaber es abayis, ki abayis shadolkum by neres tamid, u'muster b'farich es oisa roishim gadol al nefesh. Okay, and he says, "V'yadulacha kama Torah gisha samuna beroimus migdash b'yirasai kedei shetusig l'adam ha'yifoyle shalachna v'ruach b'riyasa." Okay, this is a beautiful language from the Rambam. It's supposed to have an effect on you, and there's a lot happening in this Rambam. But I'm just going to discuss briefly because part of the point over here is certain aspects like this. Number one is that there is a sefer from Reb Shmuel ben Tibbon called Tam HaShulchan Lechem Apan B'Menorah, where he deals with, it's a Hoksav Yad, and only in recent years, mamish, the past, maybe it was, hold on, in a recent Kavitz Al Yad from 2 years ago, it was published by, hold on, Eli Garfinkel, and this has a little more about what's going on. This Reb Shmuel ben Tibbon from the famous Tibbon family, the Matargum of many aspects from the Rambam, who wrote a lot of philosophical works, which some have come to light in recent years. So he publishes this work also dealing with the philosophical aspects behind the Shulchan, the Lechem Apanim and the Menorah, Ayin Sham, how it deals with the Rambam, and he deals with it in his introduction, discussing it. Okay. Now, why am I even going down this thing? Not normal to talk about this, and answers like this. One of the seforim that deal with the Mishkan Bechlal, the Klei Mishkan, the Beis HaMikdash, is the Ramah wrote a work called Tadshe. And that is an incredible philosophical work. Yadua the Ramah wrote Mechir Yayin, Parish Megillas Esther with philosophy. So this is a philosophical work on about the Kalim of the Kalim of the Beis HaMikdash and the Mishkan. So number one is when it was so it was first published in his lifetime, 1570, I believe it was, and then it was republished in the 1860s, and it has beautiful askamas from various Gedolei Litor, Marta Gimpel, and many others. And bottom line is, here you see the Ramah in a whole different light, and this plays out with the famous Tshuva, the Ramah versus the Maharshal, the early Tshuvas over there, where the Maharshal goes against the Ramah for spending time learning philosophy, and the Ramah defends himself. These are famous Tshuvas that everyone likes to quote on the topic, but it turns out it's not just that he was familiar with it. He wrote a whole sefer, now in the Mechir Yayin, called Tadshe, and it's published in his lifetime. Massive work, which deals with philosophical aspects. So now, the Ramah writes in the Hagdama to the Sefer Tadshe, we know, and we spoke about already, we're learning Kachim, how important it is to learn Kachim, so you also have to understand it. So that's why he's justifying, not only he's supposed to say Karbanis and learn Karbanis, you have to understand it. So that's why he's going into the Sugya to try to understand the aspects behind Karbanis and the Kli HaMikdash and the Mishkan. So he has Arichos Nifla on the Menorah in his work, a few prakim devoted to it. He deals with Akeda Barichos. He deals with the Avigdor Nebenzahl, Mamish, Arichos Nifla on the Sugya, explaining, and he links the Menorah to, everyone knows, the Torah Shabbat Peh, or Torah, and this has to do with Kaftor VaFerach. So we're just throwing out there yet another work, a sefer that deals with this in a philosophical aspect, besides the earlier work from Shmuel ben Tibbon. And again, it's kedai to see. Now, it's interesting is, less well known is the Ramah gave shiur also in Mar Nevuchim in his yeshiva. So it's interesting is the Ramah was a makubal. He gave shiur on Zayar, and he also gave shiur on philosophy to his elite Talmidim. We have actually notes of the shiurim of his on the Mar Nevuchim, and we have his work over here, the Tair Segulah, which was published in his lifetime. If one wants to see, you can look at Rav Shamshon Fal Hirsch. He has Kedarka B'Kodesh, Arichos Nifla about the Menorah. And then I just like to throw out there's an expression, Kaftor VaFerach, which has to do with the Menorah. So it's early Medrash already, in the beginning of Miketz. Then the Tziv points this out, linking this to the aspects of the Torah and the Menorah. And the point is that when someone would say a emistic pshat, they would say Kaftor VaFerach, and I also grew up hearing such a thing. So it's mamish even an early medrash about this. Then a tziv kedarka b'kodesh and heimek davar has beautiful discussions, all different aspects of the Menorah. They relate to his overall themes of his work, and we're not going to go into all the different aspects of what he says, but he speaks about in the beginning of Parashat Tetzaveh, Vayakel, and in Arch of Davar also. Okay, now just to conclude, and this is not to do justice to this topic. This is not a topic that I have much to say about it, but I feel we're talking about the Menorah. So, and this deals with the Titus also, is where is the Menorah and the Kelim of the Beis HaMikdash today? So this is also a lot of ink has been spilled about this, a lot of fact and a lot of very little fact, mostly legend. Okay, now interestingly enough, and I've quoted this in the past, there's a lot of travels of people that used to travel all over, right in the times of Rishonim. One of the most famous travelers is Rabbi Yamin Toledo. So he already writes, and I'm quoting the English version, that in Rome they talk about that there's a cave that had in it that runs underground, and in there was they had stuff from the Beis HaMikdash. Okay. This is also the cave where Titus' son stored the temple vessels which he brought back from Yerushalayim. So this is an early source from Yamin Toledo saying such a thing. Okay. Lamaisa, when I was growing up I always heard that Rav Moshe Blau was famous, and I quote him always in all the episodes, for the Shiltei HaGiborim. He did an incredible bringing for Klal Yisrael, publishing numerous works of Rishonim from manuscript, and one wants to read about his life recently, and I can be more than happy to share the PDF about it. They put out a book of his based on his memoirs about his life, and he publishes numerous Rishonim. So they used to say is that he had access to the Vatican. That's how he got his Rishonim, and he knew where the Kalim were in the Vatican, and a whole discussion about it. Supposedly, I did not check on the internet. One will find his name linked various sites with this, that he saw it or he knew about it. Now, it's interesting is that in these memoirs they don't talk about it at all, and it says he never went to the Vatican. Okay, and these are authentic memoirs published by his family. Fine, and there's no chapter or piece even at all about the Kliya Migdash. So this is actually the way, if you start tracking down a lot of the legends, you'll see this is what ends up happening. The people that they say they supposedly saw it, they heard about it, it's not true. And I'm just going to quote the 3-4 sources, and then we will come to the bitter end. And that is as follows. Number one is, Rabbi Aaron Marx wrote this work called HaChasidus. It's a famous work. He wrote it in German. Some people love it, some people hate it. And he claims that the Radziner, while he was working on his Tcheles, he ends up in, he somehow got to the Vatican, and he might have seen it. Okay. And he might have seen basically the Kalim of the Beis HaMikdash. That's what he says. Again, I apologize. I have way too many papers, so that's the mess over here. And he basically says such a thing when he was there, and he saw the tzitz, I think he says, and some other aspects. Rav Menachem Kasher, in his Maluim, his legendary Maluim in Torah Shleima, he has arichos that he says, I spoke with the Chassidim the Razina Chassidim, the Radziner, they don't know of any such thing. If he would have seen such a thing, he would have made sure he would have written about it. So he never saw the tzitz. I mean, say the story was that he saw the tzitz. This is not about the Menorah per se. Okay. And he says he doesn't know why Rabbi Aaron Marcus put this in his book. And you have to be very careful not to rely on these type of things. Okay. when I was growing up, there was a famous book that till today is very famous. People like to read it, All for the Boss. And I remember, I'm pretty sure there's a passage where they found, all of a sudden, someone found the Kohen Mikdash, and they claimed maybe with the Chafetz Chaim or Yaakov Yosef somehow got that, it's time for Mashiach is going to be coming, and an Arab had it, and then the Arab died. A whole famous story. I don't remember the details. It's going back a very long time ago. I don't have the book handy to check the story, but there's such a discussion. Okay. Anyway, so in this work from Stephen Fine, he has an incredible, in Bechlal, this book is fascinating, and he has a few chapters where he deals with it, showing them what people say and what they do, and unbelievable. I noticed at least more than one in recent years. The Ami magazine had articles about it. I think the Mishpacha had articles about it. There's all different discussions about it everywhere, and every once in a while he says, yeah, I have the connections, and there's some story, and there's an interview discovered with someone that saying that they know where the lost Kalim are. And just to conclude, a few years back, I came across a Tshuva Sefer, actually many years ago, a Tshuva Sefer, the Av Bezin of Nitra Remortcha Farhand. I'm obviously saying his name wrong. Tshuvas Ber Mordechai. Fascinating work. And in the back of the work, he talks about, I'm looking through this work. I don't know if it's, I don't know if it's quoted in the works that everyone talks about the Vatican, going to the Vatican, the Kalim Beis HaMikdash. I come across a tshuva, hold on, and this is how we'll conclude. He says, what's the story with, many people ask if in Rome they have the Kalim of the Beis HaMikdash. Okay. Kitzer, he has a whole beautiful tshuva over here, how he ends up in Rome. Fine. Why he ends up in Rome, it's a Geshmak tshuva to read, and he goes there and he sees all different things, and in there it goes off on tangents. He basically, at one point, also relating to us now, Yerushalmi Kachim, is there Yerushalmi Kachim? Isn't there Yerushalmi Kachim? He says he saw it, he wanted to see if it's really in the Vatican. He talks all about these things. He gets to the Vatican, they're very nice to him, he discusses things that they showed him, they told him. He goes off topic all about this, and then he says, what is the story again about if the Kalim are there? So he says, we're Chachmei Yisrael, could they even testify? And he brings a whole bunch of Makairis about it. If the Kalim are there, and then he says like this. So when I was there, I asked one of the people he got close with, it seems that he was very nice to him. This is over 100 years ago. And he says, no, Avada, we don't have it. They even let me go see inside the back room. And it's fascinating is this story that he's saying that took place in the early 1900s. This is like there's many stories of people that they like to say this story is still happening till today. And bottom line is, we have yet to locate, as far as we're able to tell, it's not there. But again, I'm not an expert in this at all. The Tchelis also, there was no Tchelis found over there. But the Tchelis, it would make sense that it would be, because it seems that they used the Tchelis, but it seems that it's not there. Are there manuscripts there? Definitely. Arayoim, I accessed myself. I'll tell you a short story to conclude. The bottom line is, we have yet to locate the Kalim of the Beis HaMikdash or the Yerushalmi Kachim in the Vatican. And I'll conclude with the following thing, is like this. This is mamash, not typical, and it's off the cuff, but basically like this. I'm working, the war has been going on ever since before Purim, and I'm sitting here, and I'm not able to focus a lot and write as much as I want to about my main works. All of a sudden, I come across a fellow, and this fellow, he basically learned in Volozhin. And this person, he learns in Volozhin, and eventually he makes his way to Paris, and then he goes to all the universities, all the different places, libraries, and becomes a professional copier of manuscripts. And he publishes in all the newspapers the things that he finds, and he's the person behind. He transcribes the Uraim, the standard Uraim that you buy in the store today. He transcribed it. It says his name in the front. He was Ish Volozhin, who ends up becoming a copier. He goes to all the libraries, the Vatican, plenty of times, and he says in some of the letters that I discover, he writes to Reb Shlomo Buber, L'mashal, Buber, I'm in Vatican. What do you need? I'll make you copies. Now, to understand this is how it worked in the olden days. It's like we're spoiled. We have the computer. So all you do is, as I said, you press a few buttons and you have a crazy manuscript. So I'm sitting in my room while the bombs are going off, and I'm going back 150, 130 years into all different archives all over the world, discovering all different letters, correspondences, this guy with all different people, which some of it I hope to publish soon. And the point is, so yes, in the Vatican, there are plenty of manuscripts out of Yom which you can access on the internet, but we have yet to locate the Yerushalmi Kachim. It seems that it's actually very likely there was never a Yerushalmi Kachim. to conclude, we have yet to locate the Kalim of the Beis HaMikdash. So these are some of the aspects of the complete smorgasbord of the Menorah. I apologize for the time.
No need to apologize. I'm sure whoever has made it this far is very eager to hear every word. Thank you very much, and I believe we kept it under an hour. So we will be in touch. Once again, if you're still listening, visit EliezerBrut.com for more information and other shiurim. Reach out to myself and to Rabbi Brut for any questions, comments, suggestions, and of course, dedication opportunities. Thank you.